we've been working on this like a lot of different ways, but just trying to find out what metrics and systems need to be in place. Well, what metrics are you using to measure success, and then what systems need to be in place to get your metrics to a successful position. So these are the ones that I kind of look through. So there were, I mean, there's been a ton of iterations of this. I mean, Jeremy, you've seen our two, like coding and collections, and then case management, like metrics that we use, like that PDF that we use to make sure that we're doing things properly. There's like a ton of debate that can go on in here, but for me, these metrics here are the ones that we look at. I'm always trying to use as few as possible, um, which is different than some of the other guys do, because I just want it to be reasonable for a clinical director. For us, and maybe we can explain kind of what our clinical directors do. Our clinical directors kind of run everything inside of the clinic. Each of their clinics is kind of their own business unit. They are bonused based on the profitability of that clinic. So they have to, everything that comes into the clinic, they touch. If they want help from me, then I can certainly help them out in kind of like a coaching capacity, but I don't I don't touch a ton of stuff other than like signing leases. Yeah, yeah. If we're going to sign a lease, then I'm going to be involved in that. But besides that, they kind of get control once they've gone through our clinical director training, and they can get the numbers to where we think they should be. What does a clinical director position look like in your organization?
We're attempting to get to that model right now, but currently we don't have open book management, which deters them from being able to look at their revenue per FTE and their labor rate and their overall expenses. So they're dependent on that right now, but we have a plan in place in order to be able to have that information to them by Q1 2025. So we're looking at going toward this model right here that you laid out, so that they can actually have all the tools they need to be successful. I will add, well, no, you got systems over there for physician marketing. I'm about to say a lot of the pushback or issues that we're having right now there are the ability for them to feel confident and comfortable going out and talking to people, because clinicians, and that's really not part of what they ever were taught.
Mm.
So if you have a really good clinician, they may not be the best physician marketer, but they have to be able to learn that, because there are going to be laws in the schedule and they need to fill that by doing something. And a lot of times they'll fill it by doing, project work versus trying to go out and have a conversation with a doctor.
Yes, that's holding them accountable to the numbers. So it's when our CDs have free time in their schedule, like we expect them to be out marketing, because if they have free time in their schedule, it means there's holes in them. Now we have 4 hours a week that clinical directors get for CD time, and our productivity expectations are lower for clinical directors. So we expect a
Right.
clinical director to see 50 visits a week. We expect a staff PT, so someone that doesn't have responsibilities in management, to see 60 in a week, and we expect a PTA to see 67 in a week because they're not getting jammed up by initial evaluations. So the the idea that they're supposed to be see less visits per week is because they have to manage their team and do all the other clinical director stuff. So in terms of open book management, I mean, I can show you guys the things that I do that Jeremy is not doing. It's not drastically different. It's just having access to different metrics. So we go over this every week in our leadership team meeting. It updates monthly because we kind of close the books at the end of the month, and then our bookkeeper kind of organizes all the information, and we're actually switching that over right now to a bookkeeper that has like different reports and will be more visual for our clinical directors. But in terms of what open book management looks like, every single transaction can be seen by the clinical director if they want to. They typically don't dig that deep into it. But if we're looking at, like, let's just take a look at August. So you can take any month of the year. Let's see what happened in May. So here's all of our offices. So Allentown, Bangor, Bethlehem, Easton, Upper Country. Ignore the wellness stuff because that's just a different thing in our organization. But these are the numbers. We look at employee costs. So this is total money that was handed out to their staff. So this is where you get the labor rate from. For us, as you can see here, our labor rate here is on 17. We want this number. This is actually pretty good. We want that number. Traditionally, we've always wanted it under 50%, meaning if we get $100,000 in, $50,000 of that is going out to salaries, benefits, other features of their job, like paying for gym memberships and anything that is associated with employee costs. That's what we look at. This was a
Yeah,
pretty good
I
month.
was about to ask you to clarify. You said money handed out to the employees, but that does include insurance benefits, 401k matches,
Yep.
anything that directly goes to, we'll say, retention or salary of that employee.
Yep. Yep. So
Okay.
we do birthdays, like we have, I think for birthdays it's like $50, and for anniversaries, work anniversaries, it's $100 that we allow for people in our organization. Anything that goes to the staff would be included in this number. So this is like abnormally low. We must have been super productive at this point in the year
That's
because there's
really freaking good.
yeah, so there's two ways you can affect this number. You can pay your people less, good luck with that, or you could be more productive. Now, this isn't reflective of I'm jamming 80 visits a week down the throats of my therapist. We rarely see over our production expectations consistently. And if we do, they're bonus for that. So that would be another thing that goes into your equation. Like if a clinical director sees 55 in a week, now they're going to get bonused on that. If a staff PT sees 65 in a week, it's different tiers of that. We don't have to go over that on this call, but it's just like a little kind of reward. It's usually 100, 150 bucks that they'll get in their paycheck to say, hey, you kicked some ass last week. You know, here's the reward for that. We appreciate that. So, but that's what that labor rate is. Marketing, this is like what we spend on marketing. This is low. Arlen, if he's watching this, he's going to be really mad at me. But you know, he wants, if you're pushing to grow, you're pushing close to 8, 10, 12% is okay to spend there. And then there's variable and fixed expenses. So fixed expenses should stay fairly fixed. By definition, variable can vary. Like I'm looking at those are pretty consistent too. So if there was a huge jump in a variable expense, then the clinical director would be like, hey, why did my variable expenses go? It was 6.47% this month. It was, 3% last month. This time last year, it was 3%. Why did that jump up? Oh, we had an equipment purchase or something we didn't amortize out. So that's why that is. And then their profit is here. Now, again, I picked a good month, so I'm looking really good here. But there's some months where these numbers are in red. It just depends on the length of the month. If you have, we'll see a huge jump and everybody will get really excited. And like this would be one of those where it's like, wow, we made 90 grand this month. That's abnormally high. Maybe we got more payments from insurance companies inside of that window of time. You have to kind of look at, well, why did this happen? And then more appropriately, it's like, okay, well, what's happening in months where it's red, right? So let me look at August. So actually August we were pretty good too. Let me find June. Okay, so here we found a red month. So it's like, okay, what's going on here? I can tell you this Easton office had just opened up and we had free rent for a couple months and then that kind of went away. So that's probably what's happening there because they were not productive enough. So we lost $11,000 in this clinic this month. And you can see the rest of our clinics were kind of low as well. Like total, we lost $2,000. We showed up to work, worked our asses off and lost $2,000 that month. Now you have to go back and look at, okay, why was that? Was it a shorter month, a shorter time period? Now, again, as you guys know, if you treat a patient today, you're not getting paid today. So you have to look at kind of the previous, 6 weeks, 4 weeks, depending on how quickly you're getting paid, and then get some answers for that. The cool thing with this is that we can compare this to other months in the year in this spreadsheet. And this spreadsheet is just a spreadsheet with some cool formulas on it. It's not like any special software or anything like that. So that kind of covers like kind of in a short period of time what clinical directors are responsible for and kind of the tools that they have to look into that. And then that's what it's one version of open book management is. Arlen's open book management might look different than Kevin's, might look different than Jeremy's when he eventually does it. What we want to do is give the clinical directors enough information to make decisions. So it's like, hey, um, and big decisions are we going to hire somebody? And are we going to move a location? So right now we're moving one of our locations into bigger space at the end of December, which is like 6 or 8 weeks from now. We are moving another one of our locations into more space because they're running out of space, but that's not going to happen probably till the spring. So big decisions like that have to be backed up with actual numbers. It can't be like, yeah, it's pretty tight in here. We're getting busy. I think we need another therapist, or I think we need some more admin help. Probably the admin help is the thing that I hear the most. Is that same thing on your side, Jeremy? You go to the admin team, man, we're swamped. What's going on? Like we need to hire some more people. Doing that based on a
Yeah,
feeling can kind of get you in trouble.
we had that, but I had the numbers to back up. So I, instead of hiring another admin, I hired a VA to take some off their plate, and I got huge pushback for that. But I just got confirmation yesterday that that was the best hire I ever made. It just people don't like change, and it took some adoption. But yes, definitely, because historically we've always said, one admin per 100 visits. But if you can improve some of your systems and processes, we're getting down more to 2.5 or 420 visits. Believe it or not,
Okay.
that's what our goal is for 2025.
Yeah, when we do evaluations and we talk to other companies, like, hey, tell us about for billing collections, tell us about what's going on with your billing collections. One of the metrics we look at is like how much money you are spending to collect the money that you're getting. And sometimes we see some practices that are like wildly out of whack with um, how many FTE they have dedicated to visits. So, for example, like some people might know Jody because you've gotten on calls with her, but Jody does every bit of money that comes to our organization touches Jody, or she touches it at least once. So she's managing somewhere around right now 700 to 750 visits. And that's one person who communicates with our billing team, who she's in charge of over the counter collections. She also does all of our authorization. She does a lot, but she has some help. So we have some part-time aides that are typically kids that have a 4-year degree that can do some basic administrative work. So she's got some help with that, but she manages, and she could probably get up to 800 visits a week and probably not have too much issue with it with a little bit of help. A lot of times we see practices that are seeing half that number of visits and they have like 6 people on their admin and billing and collections team. And we're like, okay, we need to look at the efficiency of that division to make sure that that kind of makes sense. So one way that we look at that is revenue per FTE. This gets a little bit more variable. It depends on your revenue per visit. Like if we have a practice that is averaging $140 per visit versus, $97 a visit, that revenue per FTE might need to be adjusted. But that's another way to kind of evaluate how efficient your team is. And it's something you want your clinical directors to look at. Our clinical directors look at that at their individual business unit, which is their clinic. Yes, they look at the global whole, like Robbins Rehabilitation, but really they're only concerned, and that's where we want them to be concerned with their clinic. So they need to have the numbers for their clinic. If their revenue per FTE for their clinic is a lot lower than someone else's, then they need to try to find out why that is. So Jeremy, on these stats, is there any other stats that you look at that I'm not looking at?
Um, you know what? I've got to let me look at one thing real quick so I can give you a really good answer.
So as Jeremy's doing that, if you're building this out for your clinical director or for your team or for your division, like every unit of your business should be held accountable to something, all the way down to the individual like therapist or admin team. Like they have a main stat and substats. We're just kind of building that out in a different capacity. So every division has main stats and substats. Every location has main stats and substats, and then your whole organization has main stats and substats. So you build out the stats that you want to look at, and then you look at the systems that you need to put in place in order to make those stats come to life. So once that happens, then you can look at, okay, if the stat is not where we want it to be, what are the changes that we can make? Usually attacked with OKRs, which is another system that we put in that just kind of keeps everybody accountable in order to try to improve that. And then we take actions, typically in a 13-week cycle with like one quarter. It's like, okay, did the actions that we take here lead to an improved lag measure, or are the lead measures leading to lag measure? I know there's a lot of terminology that Jeremy and I know that we threw in there, but it's
Yeah.
once you kind of put this in, then it becomes more controllable. It becomes like, all right, I start like tweaking the levers a little bit, and then it just becomes, you feel like you have more control over your practice.
And like you said, there are smaller stats in every stat. So one thing that jumped out to me is the arrival rate stat, right? So you have your overall clinical arrival rate, but then we break that down even further for initial evaluation arrival rate, because
Right.
that's a key stat. Because in initial evaluation, if you're looking at a daily visit not arriving, that's one visit. But if your length of stay is 13 and you have an initial evaluation that doesn't show, that's 13 visits. That's not one visit. So that's a lot more powerful. So we definitely look at that. And if we have an issue with our initial evaluation rate, then we start looking, okay, what changed in the process? You know, are we not communicating correctly with that patient? Are they not getting onboarded prior to that actual first visit to make sure they know what to expect and why it's important?
Yeah, we looked at our initial evaluation arrival rate at our offsite for 2024. And we always kind of assumed like, oh, they canceled their evaluation this week, but they just rescheduled for next week. And we didn't track that very well. So I went through and looked at the number for the year, I think was just around 90%. And we said, well, we're not going to get 100% arrival rate. It's just not going to happen. But what if we got to 94%? And so we ran the numbers at our offsite. And if our initial evaluation arrival rate was 94% instead of 90%, because remember, an initial evaluation that doesn't show up for us, you're losing the amount of money that you would generate from at least one plan of care. And for us, we actually do 1.5 because more than half of our clients come back for a second plan of care inside of 5 years. So, but just on a low number, let's just say, okay, we missed that opportunity for initial evaluation. They lost interest in PT. They went somewhere else. They didn't want to wait around to come in for their initial evaluation. It was over $250,000 that we lost. If we could have gotten our initial evaluation arrival rate from 90 to 94, that's the revenue that we lost. So we focused in on that this year, and we have systems in place, and we're doing a better job of, okay, if this patient is initial evaluation disappears off the schedule, like that's $1,600 that just disappeared off the schedule. All the other stuff too. I mean, it's an opportunity to help a patient. That one patient that, lost interest for some reason might be one of your evangelists, right? They might be one of your people that come in, had an amazing experience, tell their entire family, everybody they work with, and you missed out on that opportunity. So we focused in on that. So I added that stat to here because that's a really important one.
Yep. That's everything else is just substats of some of those stats that I track.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
And
All right.
graph,
Well,
by the way.
yeah. So next steps for you are find out what your stats are that you want to track. Like this is like a main dashboard for us. Like we put these out into, if you came to the live event that was in Arizona, you saw Arlen's talk. Again, go back and watch that. But you kind of see what happens when he graphs that stuff out, and it kind of brings your data to life. This is kind of our main dashboard for clinical directors that we're looking at as we're kind of redoing our clinical director training. But if you don't have some kind of system for clinical director training or expectations, then it's always going to be you that is running everything. So I was at a conversation, I was in an office the other day, and a patient said, how often do you go to all your offices? And I was like, I don't really know how to answer this. Or I wanted to answer it carefully. I know what the answer is, but I was like, well, I haven't been at my Bangor office in probably 9 months. I'm not like super proud of that. I probably should go up there and check in on those guys. Just I meet with the clinical director regularly, but I haven't physically been in that office in a while. And like the patient was like, I don't understand how that's possible. Like, how do you do that? So, well, we hire good people, but then you've got to have some kind of system to train them. You can get lucky. Like I'm sure anybody listening to this call has been like, yeah, I hired this person and they just was killing it out the gate, and they actually improved it way better than the hat that I had written for it. But that's kind of rare. Most people are going to need a little bit of direction and some training and some help. But if you can figure that out on the front end, then your life just gets a lot easier. And then you have the opportunity, or I mean, you don't have to be on top of everything, like going to every single of one of your locations every week. You just put good people in place and then train them.
If this photo will come over, I want to share this. I don't do a ton of Instagram, but every once in a while I see something that is just fantastic. So I want to share this real quick because it really was really good. So hopefully you can see this photo right here.
Oh, so you
and
can see
read
behind the
this.
photo, that's Jeremy's Tableau. So
Yeah, that's my tableau.
that's,
Those are my stats. Those are my graphs.
yeah.
Uh, so this is right here to know if it's a you problem or a system or a person problem or a system problem. So if you answer, I think she said no to any of these right here, then it is a you problem. So did you hire the right talent? Yes. Did you teach them? Did you train them? If you answer no to that, then that's a you problem, not a person problem, because that's a knowledge gap, right? So the importance, did you prioritize? Do you communicate correctly? Do you set proper expectations? If you answer no to any of those, then it's a you problem, not a person problem, right? So you need to go back and you need to fill those gaps. That's a process or a system issue, not a person problem. And right here, is it a good cultural fit? Did you build the right culture in order for that person to thrive? Did you get commitment to them, and are you holding them accountable? If you answer no to any of those, then there's an action gap, and you need to go back and look at the systems or processes. It's not the person. So that kind of hit me because I'm looking at a lot of leadership stuff, and I think that kind of fits in right now because as you're doing clinical director training and looking at the systems and processes that you have in place in your business, this is something that you can use as a tool to make sure that you're hitting every step along the way to make sure that your systems and processes are tight for that training and for that future accountability. Because if you have those gaps, then you're going to have a lot of confusion, and confused people don't do what they're supposed to do because they just don't know. So we have to make sure that we're doing all these things. We're hiring the right talent, we're teaching, we're training them, we're prioritizing their tasks, we're communicating on a daily basis, we're setting those proper expectations, we're building that culture so they can thrive and succeed, we're getting that commitment, and then we're holding them accountable to all of the things. And that's where the metrics come in place.
Nice, man. Let's end it on that. Couldn't have said it better than that. Thanks,
Nice.
Jeremy.
Yes, sir. All right. Hey, I'll see you in about 2 minutes with Jeff.
All right, see ya.